Hello and welcome to WJTS in.form. I'm your host, Bill Potter. Well, the Indiana legislature actually gets in session today, and earlier last week, Mark Messmer stopped in to talk with us. He is a state representative for District 63, and so actually we pre-recorded this, but we're going to talk about things that are coming up in the legislation in the next few weeks. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show.
Great to be here as always.
Well, we're glad to have you. Now, Mark, today you're really talking about what has started today.
Right.
Is the first day of the session. This is a short session, meaning what?
It's a non-budget year, which means any bill that has a price tag, attached to it, probably won't get very far. If it probably won't even get out of committee because we don't reopen the budget during these non-budget years, the short session years. So it's basically going to be policy ideas, but not new, big ticket items. So we're a short session, which means we're only in session about 30 actual session days. There's conference committee time, there's other, and committee days. So we'll get done about March 10th to 15th, kind of in that range as we get past the first half, which ends February 4th. Then the second half of session, it's scheduled to be 4 weeks of committee time. What happened 2 years ago was they said, get your work done quick, we're going to try to wrap up a week early. So that second half of session, that schedule is not real defined, but we have to be done, I think, by March 15th. 2 years ago during the non-budget year, we got done 4 or 5 days early. So I would expect a little bit of push to do the same thing again this year. Let everybody get home and get back to the real world.
Okay, now we're going to actually talk to Mark in two sessions. One is tonight, and the other is going to be aired tomorrow night on 18 WJTS as part of WJTS in.form. And then we're going to talk about 4 different points that the governor is really pushing. But today we're going to talk about the session itself and some bills that you're pushing. But first, let's get a little bit more about the session. So today, what happens at the first day of the session, which was today?
Right. Obviously, you can't hear bills the first day, but the first day, all the bills that we've been working on, throughout the summer and fall, those bills get filed with the clerk's office, and they could be filed anytime from organizational day until next Monday. That'll be the cutoff to file a bill. So any bills that are filed, they get assigned. They have what's called the first reading on the floor, and the governor or the speaker will read through the list of bills. And there'll be multiple bill lists, but the first day we'll get maybe bill list 1 and bill list 2. All the bills that have been filed, as of opening day, they'll get their committee assignment. So that's really the first and probably only official business we'll do today. There'll be some speeches. There'll be some from the minority leader and from the speaker. There'll be some, goals for the session that they'll talk about and outline, and there'll be basically. The bill assignment to committee will be the only real official stuff we do the first day, but you got to start somewhere.
Will any bills really make it to voting this week?
No, not the first week, because we'll start committee hearings probably Tuesday morning.
Okay.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Wednesday is all committee time. Tuesday at 1, and then Thursday usually at 10 is when session starts. So in the morning, Tuesday morning, there could be bills that are assigned on Monday. Tuesday or Wednesday, they could have committee hearings. If I get bills assigned to my committee on Monday, then I'll probably schedule some of them for hearing, Wednesday. That come to I'm chair of the Commerce, Economic Development, and Small Business Committee. So any bills that would get assigned to that committee, if I think they're worthy of a hearing or and need to be moved. Some bills are maybe business regulation that aren't necessarily beneficial to the state. So as committee chairman, you read them, you look them over, you decide if they're good policy that you want to see move forward, and if any of those need to get scheduled, we'll schedule those for Wednesday.
Okay, now we're going to talk about, because there's bills that'll come up, but you have 4 bills in particular,
right.
And maybe working on a 5th one.
Working on a 5th one.
Okay.
It's not quite ready yet, but I got 4 that are done and on my desk waiting to be taken to the clerk, and I didn't file them yet because I want to try to talk to people that are other committee members that might want to be a co-author. So I'm the lead author, and then you can just, on your bill forms, if you have other representatives that want to be co-authors with you, you have to, handwrite their names on them at this point. But I've got those 4 are ready to go, and 2 of them are what came out of our interim economic development summer study committee. 2 of those bills are really the 2 that I'm going to push for the most. But throughout the summer, I was able to get the governor on board with them. The Indiana Economic Development Corporation, which is that's the economic development wing of the governor's office. They're endorsing these two bills that came out of summer study. So we'll try to push those if possible and get them through this year.
Okay.
One is what is called a Hoosier Business Tax Credit program they currently have, but the credit is a non-refundable credit. That means if you have a new startup company who's qualified for that tax credit program, and it could be anywhere from $10 to $50 to maybe $100,000 a year. That's negotiated with the IEDC during that during your as you're bringing that company to Indiana, startup company. That amount of that credit is based on the size of the investment, but that credit, if you don't make money, you don't get the credit. And most companies, when they start up their companies the first few years, usually aren't profitable out of the gate. And the IEDC agrees that for them to really have a usable incentive program from that, they'd like to make it at their discretion, during the negotiations, be able to make it a refundable credit. So if your company earned the potential of $50,000 tax credit per year, that whether you make money or lose money, you're going to get that, you're going to have the ability to take that tax credit. So you may not make a profit, but currently if it's a non-refundable credit, most companies that credit only gets used probably 1/3 to half of what they award actually gets used, because most companies don't make a profit. So we're going to get that one moving, and then the other one out of summer study committee, there's for investments of $100 million and up in what they call data warehouses. People with smartphones now know all about the cloud, your backup off-site storage systems for PCs, for business computing. Well, there's a Northwest Indiana has an area that ideally located on a broadband main hub, that there's businesses in Chicago, hospitals, businesses that would be perfect. It'd be a perfect location for these data warehouses because of their location, to a major. All the infrastructure is there, but currently Indiana charges a sales tax on the computer equipment that's in those data warehouses. We've got good property tax treatment of those. We passed a bill 2 years ago that gives them a nice abatement period for the equipment in them, the business personal property.
Okay.
But the actual hardware that's in it, if you have a manufacturer of cars, of furniture, that equipment is not taxed sales tax when you buy it. It's sales tax exempt. We want to make that computer equipment in that data warehouse considered manufacturing equipment, because the product that they manufacture is data storage. Okay. So the governor's on board with that, and currently those projects tend to be anywhere from $100 million to $1 billion investment. Well, 7% on $1 billion investment is $70 million. That just boots Indiana out of the competitiveness of getting that project.
Well, people may be saying then, but we lose that 7% on that money, and that's a lot of money that could go in the coffers.
Well,
however,
but 7% of zero is zero. We're not losing anything if you're not getting that project. If you get that project, you've got the construction cost to build it, you've got the employees that are hired to run it. But if we can't compete to get it, I agree. You're losing that potential tax. Well, you're never going to get that tax because we tax it, other states don't. They're never going to come here.
So it's an incentive to get them to build here,
right.
Which then you get the income tax off employees, and construction, other materials that are purchased.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. And the $100,000+ dollar salaries that go for the people who run the. I mean, this is a very high tech industry, and it's a very it's got a lot of benefits. That we've got some places that are perfectly suited for that we need to make a little tweak. So those would be the two primary ones. Then I've got an Office of Entrepreneurship bill that I'm working with the Lieutenant Governor's office. We've passed some good, I guess, pro-entrepreneurial pieces of legislation in the last few years. We've got some good higher education, entrepreneurs and programs that we're incentivizing. We've got startup entrepreneurism programs that are available, but we don't really have a captain of the ship. Okay. I mean, nobody who's really, really organizing these different programs that we've passed. and the Office of Entrepreneurship would be under the Lieutenant Governor's office, and then that person would be in charge of taking all of the bits and pieces that we passed and having somebody actually in charge of administering them.
Okay.
So.
Well, that sounds pretty exciting. Now, you also, there was a bill passed last year concerning the levy, but you're going to introduce yet another bill to help clean that up?
Yeah, there was and it's kind of ironic. We passed a bill dealing with a levy in Davis County that there was bits and pieces of the legislation in place, but there was legislation that said if there's a breach in the levy and because they've let it fall out of compliance, the paying those bills falls back to the county level. There was never anything in our statute that said the members of that levy board, need to start repaying, at any specific time. So we cleaned up the holes in the statute, the holes in the levy bills. But I guess the folks who are, and they've come to agreement in Davis County on a repayment schedule now since we passed that legislation. But they've decided they don't feel like the legislation applies to them 100%. They're choosing to pick and choose what parts of the statute they want to comply with, and the stuff that they don't like, they're saying, well, we really fall under this 1960 statute that used to be on the books. Well, that statute is not on the books anymore, and I guess the clarification to what we did last year was stating, in fact, that 1960s legislation, doesn't pertain to you, and just clarifying, you can't pick and choose what parts of this you like and don't. They like the fact that they can take their bill to the county to pay it. They didn't want to repay it in a specific time, and now there's other parts of it about having a county council and county commissioner appointee to their levy board. They don't feel that applies to them. Just the part that they want applies, but the part that they don't want don't. So we're just going to clarify. Yes, in fact, it all applies.
Okay.
Seems obvious, but evidently not.
Well, there's always ways around everything.
Yes.
Well, and Mark, we're going to talk more with you tomorrow. So make sure you tune in tomorrow night at the same time on 18 WJTS as we'll continue our discussion with Representative Mark Messmer, and we'll talk about 4 points that the governor is wanting to push through this year's legislation. And so we hope you join us to find out more about that. Thanks to our guest, Representative Mark Messmer. Tune in tomorrow night for WJTS in.form as we continue this interview. Thanks for joining us.